uppercut, try to hit me in the gut, thinking that I won't react. You whispering my name, thinking I won't be the same. Turn fiction into fact. See what you didn't know, bruises that I'll never show, slipping on your every jab. So tighten up your fist, step into the ring with this. I hope your mama's got your back. First round, you thought you would've knocked me down. Fifth round, bleeding out the side of your mouth. Final round, holding the sound of my name in the crowd. You didn't bust. Oh, 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 oh. You didn't bust. Oh, 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 oh. Just 'cause I took a break, you're making a huge mistake, thinking you can take the throne. Look at you trembling, step into the lion's den. Bet you wish you stayed at home, begging for mercy underneath your breath when I ain't even sweating yet. My legend's written in the stone, yeah. You're crying age, you're in defeat is now your only friend. Even your mama's gotta know. First round, you thought you would've knocked me down. Fifth round, bleeding out the side of your mouth. Final round, holding the sound of my name in the crowd. You didn't bust. Oh, 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 oh. You didn't bust. Oh, 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 First round, fifth round, final round. Oh, yeah. First round, fifth round, final round. No, 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 no. First round, you thought you would've knocked me down. Fifth round, bleeding out the side of your mouth. Final round, holding the sound of my name in the crowd. You didn't bust. Oh, 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 oh. You didn't bust. Oh, oh, oh,
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Downtime. My name is 𝗢𝗍𝗲 Soutter. Thank you all for joining us. With me today is Commander Lance McMillan, and I'm sorry, what is it as entering M1632B?
Yeah, sure. We'll go with that one.
Okay. I've betrayed my somewhat lack of knowledge in regards to military pay grades. So thank you all for joining us. It's been oh god, there's been a lot going on. It's been kind of a crazy week, but I think we're going to chillax today and just see where the winds shall take us. How are you gentlemen doing?
Pretty good, actually, considering that I was at the endodontist today and had 2 teeth extracted.
So
Ow.
are you, how much what is it? How much of the are you still like under the influence? Are you seeing vapor trails? How much can we mess with you? I want to know.
No. I was given some pretty heavy duty pain meds, but I'm trying to hold off on taking them until I go to bed, so they'll help me sleep. So I'll just hope that ibuprofen will contain the worst of it for now.
Well, I think
You
that's a
keep
good idea.
hoping.
Hold off on them, and if you happen to be interested in selling them later, just ask them for a friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear this is just like, third or fourth. I hear there's a pretty good market.
Really? I never.
That's
knew.
what I'm told. I obviously would never condone drug use or illicit drug sales on YouTube ever. Don't do it, children.
Yeah, probably shouldn't even joke about it, considering I know you guys. No, I mean, it's just insane. We quote the former president of the United States and his utter horseshit. We quote it because it happens to be news, and because if you're going to be talking about the news, you kind of have to say what he's saying so that you can understand just how batshit. There's like a batshit scale from 0 to 100. We're trying to figure out how far up to 16,872 he is on that scale, and we kind of have to repeat what he's saying. And we repeat it. They're like, oh, you've repeated, false claims. It's like, we were directly quoting the man. I hate, as much as I hate to call him the former president of the United States, it took me forever to even be willing to. I don't think I actually referred to him as president until after he was out of office.
Yeah, you could. Ex-president.
Yeah. Uh-huh. And then,
I specifically said that we're not condoning this. This is bad stuff. You should not do it.
It does not seem to help in the slightest. But then the shills got struck. We got struck. Who else? I think Sunday got struck, if I recall. I don't know. At least two or three others. It's like everybody's getting taken down like there's no tomorrow. And I applaud them trying to crack down on the information, but I had a long chat with their customer service. I was like, okay, here's an idea. Any channel that has basically successfully appealed every single one of these, just go straight to the appeal and the human review. Your bots are not, because the bots won't tell the difference between if you say the earth is flat, and if you say I'd have to be completely batshit crazy to think that the earth is flat, the bots just catch the earth is flat in both of those, and you get flagged, and your channel goes down until you win an appeal on the thing. It's like, oh, God. That's enough me bitching about it. No, I'm probably going to bitch about it more later, but anyways.
No, I mean, I have the same, not with YouTube, but the same kind of crap with Facebook, where I'll, quote a movie line or something that's well known, and immediately, hate speech. It's a quote from a freaking movie, and it's not even being used in context. It's being used as a joke. Come on. Oh, no. It's hate speech.
I don't know how many times. Or my wife got a 2-week suspension, or was it 10 days, or whatever their midterm suspension from Facebook was.
It escalates. It starts off with 1 day and then 3 days, and the more often you do it, the more you're spanked. I'm up to a 6-month suspension now.
Yeah, she's been hit a couple of times. But she said she posted in a comment section, she's like, said whoever friend's name it was, we need to go kidnap our mutual friend for a girls' night out.
Yeah.
She got suspended over that. So apparently don't even joke about kidnapping your friends that to go have a girls' night, because Facebook will suspend you for that.
I've been pretty active on Twitter for like somewhere between 6 and 10 years. I've been pretty active. I've never been suspended once. Haven't had a single run-in. I think part of that is just being reasonably cautious with what I say. But I was active, and I was engaging, getting into a lot of religious arguments too. Now it's like, it's funny, I don't even care. So I've just started like writing dirty limericks about Elon Musk and stuff like that. And purported. Now these now keep in mind that these allegations have not been proven. We don't know if they're true or if they're not false, but allegations about him, a donkey, some wine. I've been doing all that on Twitter. Nothing. I'm fine. Apparently, I can't be touched on Twitter, which is hilarious because, well, it is and it isn't. I'm just like, really, Twitter. And I didn't even say parody in my name. I'm practically daring him to. There were rumors that he was individually nailing accounts that were critical of him. I'm not sure that that's true. To be fair, I've been pretty critical of him, and less so of the donkey. The donkey was a victim, but I've been pretty critical of him.
Pure circumstance.
Yeah. But so far, and I've made sure to tag him in all of them, but I think he's getting a lot of hate tweets right now, so I can't really blame him for. And Wilberforce, the reason I gave yeah, please, sorry.
You derailed my train of thought. I don't know what I was going to say now.
Well, so, teaching has become an absolute nightmare too. I was teaching high school, and already it was bad, and it's just gotten worse. And you spend more time filling out all the paperwork, and mostly to cover your ass, so that when the parents sit there and say, "Oh, you've done X, Y, and Z wrong," and the parents are absolutely in charge. They don't say it's not the principal, it's not your department head, it's not the principal, it's not the superintendent, it's the parents, absolutely, because that's how the superintendent gets the money for the school. So, and since the superintendent owns the principal, obviously, and the principal owns the department head, it's the parents. And so you have to document absolutely everything that everybody says, does, that could be misinterpreted.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just like, wow, at some point I'd like to teach somebody something, but.
No, we wouldn't want an educated population, would we? Then they might actually start voting, be able to determine what stories are bullshit and actually make informed decisions about policy. We wouldn't want any of that.
That would be just wrong.
Shoot, yeah, and I'm tired too, but the parents are the problem. The parents are absolutely the problem. Everyone thinks teaching is easy and they can teach, and they also want it sort of have it your way, right? So my child comes from a family that doesn't believe in evolution, so you can't teach evolution, and you can't, it's, well, you get less of that where I'm from, but you get that everywhere, and it's a friggin' problem.
Yeah.
I founded the mock trial team for my school, and I really enjoyed that because I could actually, it was usually older, more mature kids, and I could kind of get away with murder. Not
literally.
Not literally, but, well, it was a mock trial team, so I got to be a little careful there, too. But, no, and by that point, most of the students knew me, and I really had I did not like those rules, and I was reasonably well known for flaunting them when I thought I could get away with it, which is most of the time, but not always. But because you're trying, you're talking about cases, I could come up with some really just great hypothetical cases that, people would come in and say, wait a minute, is this case about, a cross-dresser that murdered somebody and then was this, and this? I said, yeah, which is a true case in Boston. Like, well, does it have to be a cross-dresser? Well, of course it has to be a cross-dresser, because how do you think if you're the lawyer and you've got, 12 cis white males and you're trying to defend, somebody who is nothing like them? I was like, oh, that's just complete and utter horseshit. The case was real, but, it's just about how do you cover your ass to make it look like, but it was much easier there, so I could just come up with, okay, so the first hypothetical I usually started with, and kids, you'd start with this first day, sit there, and I'd say, okay, you're a lawyer. Guy comes in, and he was busted for dealing drugs to kids. And you're talking to him, and say, well, gee, did you do it? He says, yeah, I did it. In fact, I like dealing drugs to kids. I do it all the time. It's the kids are the best clients for, dealing drugs to. I'll just go through the whole thing, and I am hamming the thing up like crazy. And they're loving it, and it sounds like but I finally get to this point, of course, which is you realize you can get him off on a technicality. There was a problem with the warrant, but he's absolutely the worst human being you could possibly imagine because he's already told you, he's like, so now what do you do? So from a teaching perspective, it was always fun to just go completely crazy, and then all of a sudden, poof, they've got a real problem on their hands. But then, again, you get a call from the parents. Did you say, was this the hypothetical? I said, well, that's the hypothetical you have to use, which it absolutely is not. There's a very large grade between dull, boring, and that one. But I did that for 2 years and had a blast.
Well, you can come up with some real quandaries too. You start dealing with hypotheticals, and you really get into. It's like, what is the right thing to do here? Because you got like different kinds of competing principles in effect here. It's like which one takes precedent?
I think subconsciously I was also inoculating a little bit about, if I said something a little crazy in one of my other classes, I'll be okay, that's just Mr. Soutter. It's just he's out there, but he always reins it in at the last minute. So mock trial team, which isn't always true, but it's called plausible deniability. That was all I needed. Oh
yeah, you seem like the type of person would need to build up some good plausible deniability because you are pretty out there.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm a liberal with a YouTube channel that has a co-host that's conservative. So, yeah,
I keep trying to throw you a lifeline. You keep tossing that stupid ring back. Like, I don't need a donut. I need a life preserver. Hey, moron. It is a life preserver. No, it isn't.
What is the ontology of a life preserver? I need to understand what makes it a life preserver before I can use it.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you just assume its function?
She just... Oh, God. And we finally had to. So, Titan said a while back, he was just like, we're going to need an Elon Musk channel. And I was just like, yeah, no, we're not. Well, to be fair, I knew he was going to make news. But you know what? We don't have a Trump channel. Oh, God, I shouldn't have said that at any rate.
You've done it.
No, I've done it. So, and I was resisting it for the longest time. And then finally I was just resisting it because I didn't want to cave into the fact that he was not wrong, let's say. Finally I was just like, no, it's at this point, it's not it's irresponsible to run a news Discord and not have he's got his own channel. And he was saying, I think maybe even half jokingly, we need a Yi channel. And I was just like, oh, fuck. I mean, I'm sure we do, but I was just like, oh, I don't control my own Discord anymore. Really? It's controlled by lunatics.
Yeah.
I'm starting to feel really bad for the guy. He is utterly destroying his life. Well,
it's just you're watching the implosion in live time, and you're wondering, at what point is he going to realize how stupid he's behaving and pull back from the abyss? And the train just keeps going faster and faster and faster.
I mean, there's some discussion out there that he's also being kind of manipulated by Milo and that other guy, Fuentes.
Yeah.
And that they're kind of manipulating him into destroying, us and trying to take down a bunch of other people with him as he goes down. So I don't know. I'm not in his head, probably a good thing, but I don't know what's going on in there.
Well, I mean,
better safe than sorry.
I only have a BA in psychology, and I've constantly pointed out that in my view that's basically nothing. And I'm starting to learn that's actually not nothing, but it's not a advanced degree by any stretch of the imagination. But my mother was diagnosed with a number of mental health disorders, and at 21 I just decided I didn't want to ever speak to her again. And it's not because I was angry or this or that. It was because she was so toxic. It was so draining, and I couldn't. And one day, I'm 22, 23, something like that. She calls me up, and I forget what it was she needed, but it was the first time I felt like I was speaking to a real human being. It was bizarre. Same voice and same speech patterns, but very different behavior. And I finally asked her about it. She said, "Well, I got some counseling. I got some help, and I realized I've got some very serious problems. I've been diagnosed with these things. We've been treating it, and it's been working great." 6 months, she and I spoke almost every day, and this was not the same person. And she was functioning. She was happy. I'd never seen her happy in my life. We stopped talking for a little bit. I went on a vacation. I was gone for a month, came back, so on and so forth. One day I call her up. Boom, back to the old person. Just completely, no transition, no nothing. Back to the old person. I'm asking her, I said, "Well, what about all this other stuff?" She goes, oh, that's how they get you. You see, all the pharmaceuticals are paying off.
Oh, God.
All of the doctors, and they're prescribing these drugs that you don't need. It was a fake diagnosis. How could you possibly think I've got any of these mental? I'm the most sane person you'll ever meet. And that's it. We never spoke again. I was just like, okay, done. But it's funny because that's where Yi is. And that's what happens. Once the meds start to work, you look at reality and it seems so obvious to you. And how screwed up things were beforehand seems so obvious to you. And you assume if you go off now that you know, once you go off the drugs, you'll stay knowing. And the drugs have side effects. Nobody likes them. It's a pain in the neck. It's pretty easy to OD on them. So they stopped taking them, and then all of a sudden it was a conspiracy. So I'm watching Kanye. And I've seen it a lot of times, obviously. With my mother, I've seen it, and other people too. I think most of us have seen it. And it strikes me, I can't diagnose the guy, but, well, I don't have to. He's already been diagnosed, and the whole family's been. That's what it is. He went off his meds, and he's already saying his meds were a conspiracy from, I'm not going to say it because I don't want to be demonetized. I don't want to get struck. That's the last thing we need. But, anyways, and it's really sad because I think there are people who really do care about him. He's clearly blowing up his life. It's not going to be till he hits rock bottom that he's going to start taking his meds again. He's going to take a look at all the damage that's been wrought. Hopefully that means he'll never go off it again, but it's kind of sad. But so long as he's acting the way he's acting, there's also this part of me that's like, you reap what you sow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, my family's going through that with my wife's mom right now, my mother-in-law, and she's deep into dementia. It's the same kind of thing. A lot of dementia patients go through phases that vary over the course of the day, and they start out pretty good in the morning and then get worse as the day wears on. And it's the same kind of thing. If you're watching this person who in the morning, oh yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying. They're very reasonable. And by evening, it's like they're totally unhinged. There's nobody home. And I've known people who have, mental illnesses, not just dementia. And it's the same thing as at some point they kind of get the notion through their head that taking and staying on their meds is what's causing the problems. And so they go off their meds and, they visit La La Land and never come home.
The other interesting thing, and this is a weird one, and we've talked about this because we've talked about mental health several times on this show, but it's always interesting to me. The way in which, we have a fight or flight response, and our brains are actually built for higher levels of stress than we actually have nowadays. We don't have to fight bears, we don't have to fight tigers, we're not in a constant struggle to get food and to try to stay alive. So I think there's some very good reasons to think that this is part of what's contributing to mental health. We weren't actually doing mental health issues They weren't designed to sit behind a desk all day.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's interesting is there are a number of mental health issues, some pretty severe ones, including but not limited to schizophrenia, which when the person believes their life is in danger, the mental health issue actually vanishes. It doesn't actually have to be in danger, but when they start to, their brain kind of crystallizes, and then all of a sudden, boom, they're functioning again. Ulysses S. Grant was this way. He wasn't schizophrenic, but he was mentally ill. But when all of a sudden, and he didn't stop drinking. What was it? I think somebody had asked Lincoln. They told Lincoln. They said, "Are you aware that Ulysses S. Grant is drinking, half a bottle of whiskey a day?" And Lincoln replies, "Let me know which brand so I can get it for my other generals." And he couldn't function in real life. In just the regular world, he couldn't function. Could barely tie his shoelaces. I think he bankrupted like 2 or 3 businesses. He was completely incapable of holding down any kind. He couldn't care for himself. Then a crisis comes. Boom! He's practically a savant. It was, and that's not uncommon. That's really not uncommon.
Now that's an interesting thing that you bring that up too, because I was talking to a immunologist person who does weird breakdown things on YouTube, and he was pointing out that researchers are believing that a lot of the autoimmune issues that people are suffering today is because we've largely eliminated a lot of the parasites from like our diet and stuff. We're just not subject to parasites as much as we used to be, and our bodies have actually evolved to manage to have a certain load of parasites in our body, and that because it's so reduced, our immune systems don't have much to do, and so they go into overdrive and they start attacking the body because they don't have the parasite load that they were designed to be managing. So that was, I thought, was pretty interesting take on autoimmune issues.
Yeah. I'm not so sure I buy into the argument entirely. I mean, I'm sure that's a contributor of sorts, but I think one of the biggest issue or side effects, or not causal effects, that's the word I'm looking for, is the amount of crap that is in our foods, because we spray all these absolutely toxic chemicals on. I mean, the number of the amount of glyphosate, because everybody uses Roundup and stuff that's based off of that's in the diet now, which never existed before, and it's both a carcinogen and a toxin, and everybody gets it unless you're only eating food that you grew yourself in your garden, kind of thing. So.
Yeah, Dr. Ken Berry would agree with you on the modern Western diet is causing a huge number of health issues.
I do kind of buy the parasite argument, at least somewhat. I agree the carcinogens, and we're learning now that plastic is getting in the environment and is not good for us. And lead is the other big one. Lead has been one of the single biggest cause of health issues. It's still everywhere because of the leaded gasoline. But the thing with the parasites too, I have to believe, I'm curious if it would contribute to diseases like lupus or something else, where your immune system is essentially in some kind of overdrive.
That was just what he was. Yeah. He was pointing out that the researchers have proposed this as one of the possible explanations for the increase. I don't think he meant it as, no, this is the reason it's happening. I think they said researchers are suggesting that they think it's one of the reasons why we're seeing increase in autoimmune issues, is because we really aren't, especially in the Western world. Because if you go to like Africa, the number of autoimmune issues in Africans is really low. Yeah. But they're also dealing with a hell of a lot more a lot more of a parasite load than the Western world is. And the Western world's seeing a skyrocketing of autoimmune issues, especially of autoimmune issues. So, he just, and it wasn't like he was doing a whole show on it. It was just an interesting aside. And I was like, oh, well, that's kind of interesting. And I was like, I should put a pin in that and see if I can find a book or a podcast or something on it. And then I forgot until you just brought up the mental health issue with
Well, and some of this is somewhat illusionary because we're also a bit more aware of these things than we used to be, and some of these things would have gone unnoticed. And the other thing that I argue is, and speaking of things that you can say that's really inflammatory and you got to be a little careful with, but I've been known to say, okay, it's a privilege to die of cancer. Now, there has to be some context to that.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Well, because I've said that and people are like, well, it's just like, well, okay. But the thing is, it may be a privilege to die or to get Alzheimer's. When the average life expectancy, which, okay, human beings, if you're conservative, human beings have been around for 100,000 years. 100,000 years. Life expectancy only started going up dramatically in the last 200. And we went from basically 30, what is it? I think it was 34 as the average life expectancy, 34 to 86. And cancer does on occasion affect young people, but that's reasonably rare. Most of the time, cancer is a disease that you have a tendency to get as you're older, and a lot of diseases strike people who are older. Well, if the average life expectancy is 34, most people were dying before they could die of the diseases we have now, and that's the other argument I use against people who say, well, the healthcare industry has got all these they actually have the cure to cancer but won't release it. They would release it in an instant, aside from how much money they'd make, aside from being famous and getting Nobel Prizes and so on and so forth. The more people who live longer, the more pharmaceuticals we demand, the more illnesses that will be discovered because we're living longer. So it's kind of this oxymoron where the healthier we are, the more illnesses that come out. It's a strange little phenomenon.
One of the things that's interesting, that number, and I definitely heard it, is a bit deceptive because...
Yeah, I was just going to go there.
Yeah, because it accounts for infant mortality.
Right. It's like if you live to be past like the age of 18, you actually live to be in your like 60s or 70s. But so many young children died that average got brought way down, so it's not a median number.
It was actually less than 60s, but it was upper 50s. I'm going back in the medieval period and such. But yeah, I mean, if you survived childhood, and that's a very nebulous, flexible term that you can apply as you wish, but if you survived childhood, yeah, your life expectancy went up considerably. But yeah, I mean, one of the reasons you have women basically being seen as brood mares for so long is because it was literally a case of if they weren't constantly producing children, there was a better than even chance that a family line would completely die out because most of the kids would die before they, reach puberty.
Well, that was the assumption. A lot of families would have 6 to 8 children explicitly aware that they'd lose half of them. I think.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So the infant mortality rate back then was about 30%. So it was a 30% infant mortality rate, and I forget what the mortality rate was up until about 15. But yeah, once you hit between 12 and 15, your chances of survival went up dramatically. But they also had those kids doing hard labor, which was dangerous, and a lot of them died by accidents.
I'm sure that had nothing to do with it. Here, little Willie, go down into the mine and help carry the coal out.
Yeah.
Don't worry about the dust; it'll brush right off afterwards. Yeah, because I mean, I was looking, doing some ancestry research, and my father's family were coal miners in Scotland before they emigrated to Canada, and it was eye-opening to me. And I mean, I knew all these facts before I started doing this, but it was just eye-opening to see, holy crap, over half of the children die before their 10th birthday in this family. And I'm sure it was better for those who were in the gentry or what have you, and a coal miner isn't a particularly well-off position even today. So you can imagine how bad it must have been back then. And that's only, back in the 1880s, 1890s.
If I remember correctly, and this was the other, I mean, people forget too how bad polio was. Polio was just devastating. And when people talk about vaccines
and smallpox.
And smallpox, absolutely. And we've basically eradicated these things. And in some cases, there was profound objection to these back then as well. And if I recall, England actually had to make it law. They forced everybody to take the polio vaccine because the thinking was that polio, as horrible as it was actually a natural phenomenon essentially made by God. And the only thing that could interfere with it had to have been made by the devil. So you couldn't, you shouldn't be taking this vaccine. And it's like, we are a product of our own success, where we've accomplished more in the last 400 years using science, using the scientific method, this kind of thinking. We've accomplished more in 400 years than in the 100,000 before that. And people are sitting there going like, well, what has science done for me lately? It's just like, it says the person on the cell phone
I've heard
calling
that
in.
Same, yeah, I've heard that same thing, though. I heard it not just in the last 400 years, but the advancements in the last 200 years outstrip all of the rest of human history combined.
Yep. I like to go 400.
Maybe I misheard it right.
No, I think they're
maybe
both
I just
true.
misheard it, but
the other thing,
yeah, please, sorry.
Yeah, you go through periods in history where there's lots of dramatic change, and then there's nothing. And I wish I could remember, but I'm pulling this out of my ass. But the events.
That's common here.
Yeah, I realize that. But somebody once pointed out that the amount of time from the Wright brothers' first powered heavier-than-air flight to the launching of the mission to the moon was as long as the period from the launching of the moon to today.
Jeez.
So you had this huge amount of massive sudden change, and then since then, not quite the same level of change in aeronautics. So, and I'm sure we're kind of looking at the same thing right now with like information technology and computers, where it just busts on the scene all of a sudden, and it's going to kind of probably stall out at some point. I'm not saying we're there yet, but at some point it will stall. It will continue to progress, but it won't be as rapid and dramatic and holy crap. I mean, you look back at, when Star Trek first aired, and you see some of the stuff that they had on Star Trek, and everybody, oh yeah, it's science fiction, that's ridiculous. And, today, we've got cell phones, which are like communicators. We've got, all of those things are starting to, we take our temperatures by running your thing across somebody's forehead, which when they did it on the show, it was like, that's ridiculous. You still have, everybody's going to be using thermometers from now till hell freezes over. Right, sure.
There was a comment here.
Well, it's kind of like
Go for it.
What are you saying, Dick?
Oh, well, let's. It was Andrew. I'll go after him.
Oh, it's kind of like the interesting thing when you look at the amount of time where we guesstimate that life kind of sort of originated on Earth, and how long there were single cell organisms. Like the amount of time between life originating and the first multicellular organism is longer than multicellular organisms have existed.
Yep.
There was
the other one that floors me, and people always doubt this when you say it, but there were still woolly mammoths wandering the earth when the pyramids were built.
Not sure. I don't know enough to it doesn't sound right. But okay.
It is.
Oh, well, there you go. So there was
Kind of like the little memes I see where they show when different periods happen throughout the world, and so you can end up with like a Western gunslinger and an actual samurai walking into a bar and having a drink together.
Yep.
And they show how different time periods actually overlap.
Yeah. And what was the other one? It was the mastodon with the pyramids, and there was some other one that was like that. It was just you go, no, that can't be right. I know. It was, how did people get to what is today England, Great Britain, the British Isles, whatever you want to call it? You know, did they invent boats or something? And you have to explain to them, no, there was no water in what is today the North Sea. They simply walked from Europe to Britain. And that was, during one of the great ice ages where all the water was frozen up and you could do that. And that's kind of in similar time frame to when the pyramids were being built.
So there's a couple.
I read somewhere some article. Oh, go ahead. Read the comments.
Yeah, so there was Elon wants to do brain transplants. Listen, if anyone wants to transplant a brain in Elon Musk, I'm all for that.
That couldn't be worse than it is now.
Yeah. And then there was something about technology. Oh, it was quantum computers, but we'll move on from that. But the only other, just because your number earlier is entering about 200 may in fact be correct, because it is possible that both are correct. I use the 400 because the 400 is correct as well. If the 200 is correct, then the 400 is also correct. But I use the 400 because you can't really credibly say that the scientific method existed before then. So I'm trying to talk specifically about the scientific method. It really started being employed about 400 years. I don't know when that was. But I digress. What were you going to say?
I don't. I had read an article where they had found, some anthropologists had found evidence that people may have come to the Americas significantly earlier than originally believed.
Yeah.
Like almost 100,000 years earlier. And I don't know why that number is sticking in my head, but I could be wrong on that number. But significantly earlier than what we originally had thought, and that there was an earlier land bridge that allowed peoples into the Americas much earlier than we thought.
Yeah, I remember reading that, although I don't think it was 100,000 years earlier than we thought. I think it was around 100,000 years as opposed to 60,000 years, which is what used to be the standard citation of how long people have been living in the Americas.
Yeah, that 100,000 for some reason was sticking in my head on that. It's like I read it briefly, but it's been a minute ago that I read it, so
yeah,
that's probably what it was.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how people's sense of time and such gets so skewed. Everybody now walks around with a cell phone, whereas, I mean, in living memory, for me, I'm not even talking, parents or grandparents, but for me, in living memory, not only did we not have cell phones, we had party lines. You didn't even have your own private landline. You had to share it with everybody else in the neighborhood. And it's that kind of progress, when it occurs, it's so quickly that people kind of forget it and they become accustomed to the new thing. And when you remind them that, oh, don't you remember back this far? Oh, no, it was much longer than that. No, it wasn't.
Yeah, I don't think it's all that surprising when it comes to like different kind of time scales. It's like trying to comprehend the size of the known universe.
Yeah.
It's like we evolved as, somewhat medium-sized creatures, at least on this Earth. So all of our perceptions are geared towards that medium time, towards a certain period of time frame. And so when you start dealing with, the microscopic or the astronomical or the time scales of the universe, it's kind of like trying to comprehend the U.S. debt, 31 trillion. It's more money than has ever been produced on Earth before. So it's like trying to get people to wrap their minds around something like that. We weren't really designed to deal in these kinds of super small and super large.
Yep.
So it can be kind of hard to wrap your mind around that.
So, let's see. Discovering Ancient History with Pat. Pat
Lowinger.
Are you sure that's how it's pronounced? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not looking at
somebody.
the chat. I don't have my thing up, so I'm just remembering it based off of memory. I'm pretty sure it was Pat Lowinger.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I just read it and that's what pops up in my head.
I was gonna make a.
I'm pretty sure Nick is being facetious here.
Slightly. I've met the guy once or twice. Pat's a good guy. Nope, that study has been retracted. Problems with the dating were pointing out by an outside team. So, I suspect I was going to ask which one he was talking about, but I think he may be talking about the
Americas one.
Yeah. So the earliest that I'm aware of is
in the Americas.
𝗢𝗲𝗄, the land bridge that went through Alaska, and that would be about I think 60,000 years ago. So if there was another,
I definitely defer to Pat on all things pertaining to ancient history.
Well,
it wasn't like something I did a whole bunch of research on. I just remember reading an article about it.
Oh yeah, no, there have been times when people come up with theories and say, no, it can't be, or it could be this. They're not necessarily refuting, but that gets into a whole separate issue of how academia works, and you have to take a contrarian, confrontational position if you're going to advance, because if you simply say, oh yeah, I agree with all the stuff that's gone before, then you're never going to go anywhere. So you have to progress the science by making up somewhat difficult to support theories.
well, and those are the ones. I mean, every now and then you make one of those real long. I mean, listen, Darwin was laughed out of, especially when he came up with the moth. He said, okay, his theory predicted a moth with a 12-inch tongue. I mean, he was laughed out of the scientific community for that one. Turns out he was right. He called it. Yep. Thank God for people who persist in the face of overwhelming. I was just going to say that, except for flat earthers. We don't need flat earthers, but I kind of missed it.
Yeah, as long as the flat earthers are obviously ridiculous, out to lunch morons, but the whole idea that we're revolving around the sun, that's positively absurd. I mean, all the evidence is very evident that everything revolves around us. In fact, it all revolves around me personally, just so everybody understands.
Well, I'm a solipsist, so that's revolves around me just as much. It's the same thing.
Okay.
I appreciate your defense of me. Thank you.
Yes.
I mean, I guess where you want to place your point of reference, you could say that everything revolves around Earth. We're just going to stick a pin in Earth and say this is our point of reference, and the entire universe is moving around us.
Yeah.
And Dick has shown up just for this part of the discussion. It's rather apropos. I used to debate flat earthers, and it's not, in my view, as easy as people seem to think it is. And it was a great exercise because the other BA was in philosophy. or as my wife said, I had dual BAs in bullshit and mind fucking. But she doesn't seem to have given me the respect I think I deserve on those fields. But
Yeah, exactly.
what I liked about it was because, I mean, and 90% at least are pose, and I found a pretty good way to figure out which ones are pose and which ones are legit, and it was very few that were ever legit. But they figured out how to argue, especially really an infinite regress. Well, how do you know? Well, how do you know? Well, how do you know? And there's something called *𝗢𝗲𝐻 trilemma, which says that if you continue a regress far enough, you're going to hit a point where you either just have to stop, it's called a brute fact, where you realize that one of your arguments is predicated on one that you've already made, so you're using circular reasoning, or an infinite regress. It's just going to go on forever. There's no, outside of those, there's no place to stop. And learning how to argue against somebody who's willing to do that forever I enjoyed the exercise, and it is interesting when it comes to questions of problem of knowledge, which I won't bore people with, into too much now, but it is, in my view, really fascinating because you can take any fact, and just say, how do you know? How do you know? How do you know? To a point where you really cannot defend it. And if you can do that, well, is any knowledge defensible? Well, the answer, of course, is yes, but it, in my view, gets interesting and complicated. I had no interest in talking about this, but Pat, as it turns out, loves philosophy. It's one of his favorite subjects. He does it on the side. I guess it was either going to be philosophy or ancient history for Pat. And he went with ancient history, but if anyone here wants to discuss philosophy with Pat, I know he would be dying to discuss philosophy with them. Yeah, so go do that, and hit up Pat for, and he especially likes Hume's problem of induction. So if you want to work that out, he's an expert in the subject. If you don't know what it is, go ask Pat. He'd be delighted to. I really shouldn't, because he knows how to kill people. But at any rate,
let's see, what other things? I don't want to talk about Ukraine, because I know we're going to do that tomorrow morning, hopefully. Well, one way or the other, we will. So let me ask you, since I was on the road and missed the shows when the information came out, what do you think of the situation on the Trump organization being found guilty on 17 counts of don't do that, Uri?
Don't do that. I think it's absolutely spectacular. I think it's a huge deal. You pointed out a couple of things which are valid, and you have to be aware of. He was fined a whopping $1.7 million. That they spend that on like tissue boxes in a day over there. It's not, the money is completely irrelevant. But there's a couple of things why I find this significant. First of all, I think a lot of people have been intimidated and don't want to try to sue him. They don't want to try to sue the company. And the fact that there has now been a single successful, it's always the first one through the door that has to take the brunt. And, I'm hoping that this makes other people feel much more confident that they can successfully get him and the company. Now, it was the company that was being sued, not Trump, meaning even if they conclusively demonstrated that Trump had killed 13 people or whatever in the course of the business, none of that would result in any penalties from him towards him in this trial, because he was not the target of the investigation. However, the judge made it clear here that he could not, the company could not be convicted unless they could draw a line from the fraud that they knew had occurred and members, officers in the organization. Meaning the organization had to have this policy and this not official policy, but this the environment of constantly engaging in fraud, and they were able to prove that, at least in the civil standard. What that means is anybody else who's suing Trump in a civil court, like, for example, Letitia James, all of that is now already decided. So that can be ported over into her case, and they don't have to relitigate it, and Trump can't contest it because he's already lost. So in that case, which is about the fraud of it, all that evidence just goes straight over. Also, I think one of the things that they're trying to do, and this is, I would love to take credit for this. Again, this was something Titan pointed out, and I think he's correct, is I think essentially they're trying to bleed him to death. He's got so many cases now, and just a few start to win, and he can't defend himself against all of them, and he's hemorrhaging money, and nobody wants to be his lawyer. At some point, all of this is going to take its toll. His organization is now guilty of a felony. Most banks in New York have it in their bylaws that they will not work with a business that's been convicted of a felony. That means most of them are going to start calling in the debt. Most of them have clauses where if your business is guilty of a felony, we can call in the debt early. They won't work with him. He can't. So he is now, the business is already kneecapped.
And I assume it also means it's much less. I assume it also means he's much less likely to be able to negotiate new loans.
Absolutely. Now, Deutsche Bank might be still willing to work with him, but having said that, they're not, because he's already not paying them back, and Deutsche's already in its own trouble, and it'd be an idiot. Well, okay, he may try to work with Deutsche Bank again, and they don't need him anymore. So I think by itself, it doesn't look all that impressive, and probably rightly so. It's the first time somebody's done a serious blow to that business. It has hindered their day-to-day operations significantly. It has dramatically reduced their revenue. We don't know by how much. I don't have those numbers. I don't know that somebody has yet gone over it. But and then again, the biggest is that psychological barrier of, Trump's been Teflon till now. They just hit this blow, and his business is now convicted. And since he's the CEO, going after him becomes a lot easier. So the taxes, he's going to get murdered, I think, on the taxes. We're going to find out more about that. I think 𝗲𝗍𝗄 James will probably end the organization. And this is going to help. I think should have succeeded doing that even without this, but this makes it easier because, again, she just ports all that evidence over. Now, a criminal trial cannot do that because the standard of evidence is higher there. They can still, this directs them where to go, and they can use the fact that it was convicted civilly, but the evidence, it's two different standards. That doesn't port over, but in her case, it does. So I think it's a delight to see, and I think I think we're past the beginning of the end. I think we're in the middle of the beginning of the end for him. I think he's going to start losing suits, and the Supreme Court has indicated they've had it with him. Can't go anywhere with that. He's lost all the gains that he made on the Mar-a-Lago decision, and I think he's not going to find any more favorable judges on that. I think that's going to get him. I think he is in a world of trouble.
Okay, well, that alleviates some of the concerns I had, but not all of them.
Well, I saw what and you're right. The amount was insignificant, but it's the companies. And by the way, that's the other thing, which is they're going to have a really hard time recruiting anybody to work in any of the officer positions because it's been convicted of a felony. They're going to be scrutinized. Do you want to work for a company that has that on and may try to get you to do more felony? I think it's a severe blow to the business, and it's about to get a lot worse. I want to go check on the. Yeah, well, and I was going to say I'll be honest, as if that's a big thing, but it's sort of like I really can't lie because everybody here has been watching this. So I was like, I'll be honest, I've called these things wrong before. What am I going to say? Oh, I've always been right about this shit? I'm going to get 3,000 people in the live chat going, you got this wrong, you got this wrong, you got this wrong. So, but yes, I'll be honest. I've on occasion called these things wrong. I've also on occasion called them right, to be fair. But
our predictions are always wrong.
Well, not to toot our own horn, but to toot our own horn. again, like, Shinzo Abe and stuff like that. It's like, I think we called that one, and that was, now that
You
wasn't
don't
a
get your
long
own
term.
building.
We go, oh yeah. Oh, what's his? I'm
You
gonna get
don't
him
get
his own
your own
window.
building.
We're gonna put, oh my god, we'll give him his own little window. We could put a cam on him
Yeah,
and just be like, see, like,
he's feeling decidedly oppressed right now.
oh, somebody wants attention. Now, this isn't your new one?
No, this is the big guy. This is Nico, and he's 160 pounds of happy Malamute.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're either a lot smaller than I thought you were, or that's a big dog.
No, he is a very big dog. He's an unusually large Malamute. Most
Malamutes of unusual size?
Yeah. A moose. Yeah. Then we got. Okay, you can get down now. Yeah. You need to brush your teeth again. And then let's see. I'll bore everybody with silly doggy shots if I can.
I was going to ask you a bit more about him, so please do.
Let's see. Can you see? I don't have a full picture of what I'm looking at. So down there, beyond Mr. Nico, is the little one, and that's the girl. That's Coco. She's kind of a runt for a Malamute, so she's only about 65, 70 pounds. So she's a little bit less than an average. And the other guy who's just around the corner, and I can't get I don't think I can. I can try, but I don't think I can get the camera angle to show him properly. Hey.
Oh, is he in doggy jail?
Well, he's brand new. I mean, we've literally had him less than a week now. And the problem is he and the big guy have decided that they are mortal enemies and are going to destroy one another.
Oh.
So my job is to try to keep them from doing so and get them acclimated to being around one another so they learn to at least tolerate, if not become friends.
Well, and you and I think one of the... Yeah, oh, it's Henry. You go. I'll remember this.
Oh, I had looked at for a truck dog, and I thought about getting an Alaskan 𝗬𝗍𝐲, which is essentially a mini husky. So it's like a husky.
This guy's a hybrid. The one you can't see. He's a hybrid of Malamute and husky together.
I think I may have mentioned this earlier, but I hated dogs growing up. Absolutely despised dogs. Loved cats. Had an allergy, which I eventually kind of overcame, kinda. But hated dogs. Just despised them. They slobber on you. They jump on you. They all but attack you, and they're trying to play. But. And my wife always wanted a dog. Well, I've worked from home most of my life, and I'm just like, if we get a dog, I know who's going to be the one working with it, and it ain't going to be her. And she's like, no, we got. So we ended up getting a puppy, a black lab puppy, and we set him up sort of right next to where I was working, and I decided, okay, I'm now responsible for this living thing, and I don't want it to suffer, so I'm gonna have to learn how to do it. And yes, I started with Cesar Millan, the dog whisperer. It's like, I'm trying to get that accent right. It's like, now you can give your dog a snack. And I was watching him do this. I was like, this can't really be real. And I started studying dog psychology. I was like, there isn't a dog psychology. A dog is. I was like, oh wow, pack animals and the whole 9 yards. So I started training him, and I started working with the dog, and we would go out for 2 hikes and dog trails. This led to him being subpoenaed, which I think you may remember that story. My dog was actually subpoenaed and called to testify in court. That was an unusual day, but
How bad?
yeah.
I
So
would
I had
imagine
some.
that would be. You'll have to tell me the story sometime.
Yeah, I had some fun with the guy. Well, I may get there. Anyways, we did the dog park, and time grew on, and I found that I really enjoyed training him, and it was the relationship that I developed with him was so almost symbiotic. It was like he looked to me for guidance in just about everything, but was immensely loyal, and you could, knew how genuinely wanted to be given boundaries and to know what to do and how to do it. So I was like, okay, I got to up my game to be there for this dog, and so I ended up doing maybe 2 or 3 hours of hiking, actually 4 or 5 days a week. I was in the best shape of my life. The dog was one of the best. We had it so he could go outside. It was an invisible fence. He'd do his business. We changed the handle so he could just hit the handle on the door, let himself in, and close the door behind him, which was problematic at first because he put all his weight into the door. When he closed it behind him, all the paintings would rattle and everything like this. So it just slammed it, the whole house would shake. And I kept trying to get him to do it, and I couldn't. Yeah, and I was like, here I am. I've gotten him to do all this stuff, but I can't. I was like, okay, time to call a professional. So there was a Yellow Pages at the time. That's how long ago this was. Break out the Yellow Pages and going through it. My wife was like, what are you doing? I said, that's it. This is beyond me. I got to call a dog trainer. She laughs her ass off. Like, what? You're going to tell them that after your dog is done doing his business, he lets himself into the house, and your biggest complaint is he slams the door behind him. They're going to hang up on you. And that was, and actually that was very conducive to my mental health, having the dog when he died. It was absolutely devastating. And now I'm a dog person. It has to be a dog who is cared for by someone who understands how you care for dogs, which I know is you, because we've had these discussions before. But it was an amazing experience, and that's it. I still love cats, but a dog that you connect with is an amazing thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I thought about getting a snow leopard as a trucking cat. I don't think anybody will break into my truck then.
Well,
Probably
they may,
not.
but they'll run away really. They'll turn around. I mean, I could just imagine opening the door and.
I won't have to worry about feeding my cat for a while, I guess.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I suppose
Might be a little hard on chairs.
There he is. There's the new guy.
There he is.
And you can probably hear the noise of...
Oh, I can hear it. I got it. Oh.
No, come on. Be nice, be nice, be nice, be nice. Shh. There you go. It's okay. It's okay. Doggy politics. So much fun.
I did find a breeder in, I think it's England, and I forget what kind of cat mixes that they're breeding, but they are they're actually legal to buy and have. So but they're blended with, I think, Bengal cat.
Holy cow!
Which is a smaller cat, and they mix it with domesticated cats several times. Mm-hmm. So you get it like a 15% Bengal, something like that. But their claim to fame, I guess, is their cats actually look very, very similar to snow leopards, but they're like the size of a house cat.
Huh.
So yeah, they're spotted. They're the silvery and whitish color, and some of them get darker gray. But yeah, it's a really I saw one of those and I was like, oh, I want one of these for my truck. And I looked them up, and it's like, not for $22,000.
Nope. You can buy a new truck with that. Yeah.
It's like, holy crap, those are some expensive cats.
I wanted to get this would have just been, it would have been a nice dog. It would have been for the girls. If you really want to see the cutest thing you've ever seen in your life, Google Pomsky. I think it's is it a Pomsky, the Pomeranian and the Husky breed?
Oh, yeah.
So it's a Pomsky, They're the cutest dogs you've ever seen. It is essentially a miniature husky. It's a husky that is the size of a small cat, and they're nothing but fur.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the Alaskan 𝗬𝗍𝐽. They're a miniature husky too.
They're also like $10,000. These things, so it's a designer dog, but they are the cutest things. And my kids saw them. God forbid they see them. And the kids like, can we get one, Daddy? Can we get one, Daddy? Well, your allowance is $5 a week. Dog.
Yeah. The one I always thought it'd be cool to have are one of the domesticated foxes.
Yeah.
Foxes are assholes.
Not
I've had a
tame,
fox.
domesticated. The Russians, starting back in the 30s, started a program to domesticate fox, mainly because it was, for the fur industry, but it was
Also changed their pelts.
well, yeah, it changed the pelt, but it also changed behavior patterns. Their tails are different than regular foxes, all sorts of stuff. You can.
The Russians also
You can get one.
They quote domesticated the bear too. I mean, I've seen like, we're living with a bear. It's like,
no, that's taming a bear. Not very well either.
Yeah, I had a farmer had shot a fox that was living in a culvert on his property, and she had a bunch of kits, so she had 4 of them.
Yeah.
And so we all went over there and kind of stuck a big plunger in this pipe and pushed all of the puppies out. And we each took one. And I had mine for, I think, almost a year before I kicked it out of the house and said, you need to go live your own damn life.
Yeah.
What assholes foxes are. I thought that, I had delusions of the fox and the hound, and I was like, I'm totally going to have a cute little fox, and it's going to, raise up. No, that thing was an asshole. Oh my God, that thing was an asshole. It'd steal shit and then run off with it. And he'd nip you. I mean, it turns out, all normal fox behaviors, but.
Oh, yeah.
I should probably have researched foxes a little bit more before I opted to take one.
You cannot housebreak them to save your life.
Oh man, that wicked little bastard! I'm still hung up on the logistics of creating a Pomsky though.
We jokingly refer to our small female as a 𝗓𝐺𝐸.
Oh, that would be freaking adorable.
Oh yeah, and she is. She has a lot of the same kind of characteristics, that weird little hop run that the corgis do and everything. It's very funny to watch her.
It's a corgi, but it looks like a husky.
So if I recall with the Pomskys, it's basically the huskies all have to be the female, and then they breed them down to get a smaller size. They are the cutest. Oh my God, it's absolutely worth Googling Pomsky.
Well, I mean, that's still a logistical nightmare. I mean, you stick the little male Pomsky in there with the female husky, and he's looking up the skyscraper and like, how am I supposed to get up there? Do they give him a little stool?
I would imagine it may need some human intervention, which reminds me of the Ron White joke. Ron White was talking about his dog, and for whatever reason, they needed, semen samples taken from the dog quite regularly. And so Ron White's at the vet, and they're getting the semen sample, and they say, well, listen, if you have a few minutes, we can show you how to do this, and you can do this on your own. You don't need to bring him in. And he's like, no, the dog follows me enough around as it is.
I'll have to tell you a story. Keep going. Finish yours.
No, that was it. That was the Ron White joke, but my guess is it was human intervention in there.
So, when I joined the Navy, I did it through OCS. And one of the people, and OCS is Officers Candidate School, and unlike Annapolis, which is 4 years, these are the 90-day wonders, as they would call them. And there was a guy in my company when I was there who had the weirdest job, civilian job, before he joined the Navy. He was an artificial inseminator for animals, cattle usually, horses, pigs, that kind of thing. And at one point, his company was called by one of the zoos in the area, and they wanted to impregnate their female hippo because the male hippo did not get along with her, so they wanted to artificially inseminate her. So his job was to go in and obtain the sample from the male hippo. Now, the way this is done in domestic cattle industry and such is they take a probe and stick it up the animal's anus, and it stimulates the prostate electronically, gives it basically a mild shock. It ejaculates, and you thereby have your sample. So they do this to the hippo, and it's like nothing's happening. Well, turn up the power a little bit. Nope, nothing's happening.
no.
Turn up the power a little bit. So they get it to max volume. The male hippo gives this enormous grunt, ejaculates, and then keels over dead. They basically electrocuted the poor creature.
My God.
And he said, we packed up real quickly and handed over the sample and said, bye, and disappeared over the horizon as quick as our car would drive.
Oh.
So, if you ever wondered where your hippo at the zoo came from, now you know.
All right. You know what? I don't think we're going to
On
unpack
that happy note,
Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a show. Thank you all so much for joining us. I think we're done. We're calling it. That's it. Lance
you're a
has
wise
decided
man, Nick.
he's going to give us the stories. We're done.
God, the
Never want me to
reproductive
tell the
industry of the horse industry has gotten pretty crazy. They've gotten to the point now where some of the mares are so valuable that they don't want to risk the mares in childbirth. So they've figured out how to flush. What the heck do you call a little?
The colt?
The embryo,
I remember. Embryo. Jeez, why couldn't I not remember that stupid? Yeah, they've gotten to the point where they'll go in and they actually flush the embryo out. They stick it under a microscope and they check and make sure that everything's going great and there isn't any problems. And then they'll implant it in a separate mare. That's just if she dies, she dies. Mare. That's
you're a regular horse, not a purebred.
You're expendable.
Right. So. Yeah, the expendable broodmare that doesn't have any kind of pedigree or just a mutt that they'll get off of a feedlot. All she has to do is be able to carry the embryo, so they can do that. And the AQHA actually had to put in a rule because they were doing this so often with prize horses that they would only allow in 1 year. They'd only allow 4 horses, 4 foals to be registered to the same 2 parents in a single year. Because you could harvest the eggs from the mare and semen from the stallion, and you could make 40 of these in a single year, and as long as you had 40 other brood mares. So yeah, they actually had to devise rules about how often this could really be done. I was looking at some of the technology and stuff that they've used in the high end horse industry, and I'm like, holy crap. We had a horse breeding farm when I was still training horses. The horse place I worked at next door was Bennett Woodland Farms, and they did horse breeding, and they did almost all of their stuff was artificial insemination. So yeah, it got pretty interesting when we'd go over and chat with the hands over there. Oh, what'd you do today? Well, I had to train a crazy horse, tried to bug me off and kill me and stomp on me. What'd you do? I jacked off about 23 horses and sent the samples across. And they don't use the electric probe to stimulate. They actually have little dummy horses and an actual collection.
Oh my God!
Yeah. So they let the horse actually mount the dummy and they collect it that way.
Suddenly we've gone into After Dark. We've got a couple of comments that are worth read. Quote, if Russians could domesticate crocodiles, then I'd be impressed.
Yeah.
And then let's see, from Stephanie Helms, turkey basters unite. Titan pointing out that at least the hippo died happy. And then what I assume from Stephanie Helms is either a book proposal or what is currently on her nightstand. Quote, I rogered a hippo by Lance McMillan. I rogered a hippo.
I did.
Lance. Well, that's what he says. We interviewed the hippo. It was a different story. I'm just saying.
Oh, okay. Oh,
here on In Time, we get all sides, Lance.
I can only imagine the moment of, oops.
All right.
Just dead silence as everybody's staring at the hippo, and just one lonely voice from the back that just goes, well, that didn't quite work out.
Yeah.
We're like, I got the keys, 5 minutes, we're out of here. Oh.
He was fine when we left.
All right.
He seemed quite happy when we left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was smoking a cigarette. We were all like, you do you.
Oh, brother.
Even wished
All
us
right.
au revoir as we walked away.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
I'm going to call it. I'm going to call it.
Crash.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I'm going to call it before things get any worse. We're now demonetized six years in advance in perpetuity. So we'll call it. Assuming we don't get a visit from the FBI, FCC, or any number of regulators, internet and USDA regulators, we'll be having Lance back tomorrow with Operator Starsky to do our weekly Ukraine update. If you guys have been following on the Discord, a lot's been going on. Please join us on the Discord if you haven't. We have a lot going on over there, and we stay pretty much up to date with the news. Lance is in the Discord. If you're into that kind of thing, that may be a plus or a minus. But come on in and join us tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern. We will be Commander Lance McMillan and Operator Starsky update on Ukraine and a bunch of other shows. So like, subscribe, and if you like this content, probably need to get some therapy, but that notwithstanding, sharing is a great way to make somebody else's life better, presumably, and really helps us out. So please consider liking and sharing. I don't think we've been encouraged to take the YouTube shorts and the 1 minute shorts. I think we're going to turn clipping off for this episode for obvious reasons. But thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thank you both, Lance and Azandering, for coming.
Thank you.
Oh, God, I
interesting.
that last thing could have been taken way out of context, so I'm going to go before the show devolves any further. Night all.